Good evening, good evening. It is whiskey time again. Well done, Joe Johnson. This is absolutely epic. And what I'm recommending that you all do is print out Joe Johnson's letter, his rationale for his resignation, and you send that to your MP, and you send that to your MP with the cover note. So for those of you that have already written to your MP and have been saying, what now? What do I do now? This is what you do now. And here's why. First up, Joe Johnson is what we've been looking for. In terms of those who are pro a people's vote, it's largely been the same set of MPs for a while, making the argument sort of gradually. We had, since very early on, we had David Lammy, and then we had sort of Chucker and Anna, and then Dominic Grieve cautiously joined in. We've had David Willits, but who knows who David Willits is really. But now we've had what we really need, which is an MP that has towed the government line all along, who is quiet, who is dutiful, who is trying to make it work, who then suddenly snaps and breaks and says, this is bullshit. Look at the two options you've given us. They're both bullshit. This is why they're bullshit. Here's what I think we should do. By the way, I resign. By the way, I'm the brother of Boris. That is big. And it has happened with impeccable timing, because in just a few days before we think Theresa May is going to bring back a deal, it's a case of, I know what's coming back and it's crap. So just as she needs that fine balance between the hard Brexiteers and some of the Remainers and maybe a bit of the Labour Party, and needs to keep the DUP on board, if Joe Johnson sets the trend for particularly the Conservative moderates, she is screwed. And the thing is, this isn't just game playing. He writes well. He's obviously been thinking about it. It is a beautifully crafted letter. You can tell because the first sentence of every paragraph summarizes that paragraph beautifully. You can skim read this thing by just reading the first sentence of every paragraph, and the logic is tight. So let me take you through what he said, just very briefly, and then tell you how you should use this letter in order to send it to your MP, because this is a fantastic rallying point for everyone, no matter where they are on the political spectrum. He says, Brexit has divided the country. It has divided political parties and has divided families like mine. I thought for a long while that this government could pull things back together, but they can't. He then says, the choices being presented to the British public is no choice at all. You've got an option between putting the UK in purgatory and in quarantine, and an aggressive crash out situation that hurts the UK on a failure not since seen Suez. This is nothing like what was promised in 2016. And then he goes straight in to attack all the false promises. He attacks Liam Fox's thing that it's the easiest trade deal in history. He says, look at what we've been struggling with for 2.5 years, and still in terms of the actual trade deal, there is nothing on offer. There is nothing here to go forward with yet. All we're doing so far is signing up how we protect some of our citizens and hand over money. In terms of the guts of the thing, we haven't even got there. He then says, so let's say we can even protect the goods by staying in a customs union. We're a services economy, and this has blown us wide open, because either we leave that single market and have absolutely no buy into it, or we do a deal whereby we're in it, but we have no say over services, which is essentially what our country does. We have disempowered ourselves. And then he also says, while we wait to negotiate the trading terms, the rules of the game will be set solely by the EU. So he's talking about going into a transition period without any kind of deal, and during that long period, our country is slowly disempowered as we get no say, real say over what the future holds, and all the fast-changing laws are set by the other countries of the continent. Worse still, he says in the next paragraph, there is no real clarity about how this situation will ever end. This is a con on the British people. He says that. This is a con on the British people, that basically we're not getting a Brexit that empowers us. that we're doing Brexit by entering a situation whereby we have pulled all of our teeth and wait to see what comes out of it at the end, not knowing. He then goes on to say, my brother Boris, who led the Leave campaign, is in agreement with me and thinks that we will be substantially worse off than staying in the EU if we go down this route. This has left us in fraternal dismay. The argument that the government will present for the withdrawal agreement deal, he goes on to say, is not that it is better than our current membership. The Prime Minister knows that she cannot honestly make that claim. That is why she is going to offer her deal in contrast to leaving with no deal at all. So he is killing the essence of the deal there. And then he goes into the next paragraph where he attacks heavily the essence of no deal and talks about the damage it would be done there. But this is interesting. He doesn't kill it off totally. And I don't want to get into Sun Tzu philosophy, but he doesn't hammer no deal totally. He says that maybe that would be better than a deal, but look at the damage it does, and this would throw us into a terrible situation. So this is part of the reason why this letter helps get your hardcore Brexiteer Tories into this zone, because he doesn't quite shut it off all the way. Then he says, given that the reality of Brexit has turned out to be so far from what was once promised, the democratic thing to do is to give the public the final say. This would not amount to rerunning 2016, but it's about asking people whether they want to go ahead with Brexit now that we know what the deal is actually available to us, whether we should leave without any deal at all, or whether people on balance would rather stick with the deal we already have inside the European Union. He is offering the three-way. When you know the deal, you can take it, or you can leave on WTO terms and crash out, or you can say, actually, the deal that we've been refining over the last 4 decades might be slightly better than this crappy mess. And he is advocating overtly there the three-way referendum, which I kind of like myself. Then, you're going to love this, to those who say that this is an affront to democracy given the 2016 result, I ask this. Is it more democratic to rely on a 3-year-old vote based on what an idealised Brexit might offer, or to have a vote based on what we know it does actually entail? And that is a killer paragraph. He finishes it off with a very simple, very gentle, I have never rebelled on any issue before now, but I have to say that I reject this false choice. It needs to come back to the people, and his last sentence is, to do anything less will do grave damage to our democracy. So this is a killer. This is all about finding common cause with some of the leavers, destroying this Chequers deal, talking about it honestly, and saying quite overtly, I've kept mum until now, I've tried to make it work, I've done my bestest, but this is bollocks. I'm going to call it as bollocks. People need to take a view on it now, because it's so different from before. To do anything less would be a travesty of democracy. So he really goes to the heart of it and tackles these issues, these burning issues of sovereignty and democracy. That is our territory, people, sovereignty and democracy over our future choices, over where our country goes. And what I think you should do with this is you print it out, you mark it up like I have. I marked it up for the benefit of communicating to you what's in it, but you mark it up according to what hits home with you. Put highlighter on it, make notes on the side, so when you send it to your MP with a cover note, they can see what are the things that strike home with you. Maybe even add some notes on the side. What about the NHS staff? What about medicines? What about collaborative frameworks? You can add it, you can adorn it, show that you're intellectual and studied, show that you've read through all of it, show how certain parts hit more than others, show how it opens new questions. Get that prepped. This is the mini Bible that we send out, and you send it out with a cover note saying, this guy has thought it through. Have you thought it through? You've either replied to me before and you've been quite good, but what about this? Or you have never replied to me before. What are you as an MP if you're not engaging with this? Either way, you print this out, you annotate it up, you add in a cover note, you fold it up, you put it in the post to your MP, and you make sure that this is arriving early next week, just as Theresa May is trying to bring back her deal. That is the plan. Go and do it. This is Gold Dust.